"Get out and never come back," my parents shouted. So I walked away without saying a word. 3 months later, my dad texted me, "Why haven't you paid the mortgage?" I replied, "I thought I wasn't welcome." And then my phone blew up with messages. This isn't just a story about a family falling apart. It's about the gut-wrenching moment I realized the people I'd bled for, sacrificed everything for, saw me not as their daughter, but as a burden they wanted gone. And the even more shocking truth? They meant every single word. My name is Madison, and for 26 years, I genuinely believed that being a good daughter meant setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. For 3 long years, I worked 2 jobs, poured every spare dollar into their mortgage, and swallowed every criticism, every jab, every dismissive comment. I truly thought that kind of unwavering family loyalty meant everything. Until the night my parents looked me dead in the eyes and screamed, "Get out," and never come back. So I did. I walked away. But 3 months later, when my phone buzzed with a desperate message, I finally understood who really needed whom. Growing up in a modest suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, I was always the responsible one. My dad, Richard, worked grueling shifts at a manufacturing plant, his hands scarred, his back aching. My mom, Patricia, managed a part-time bookkeeping job, but her chronic migraines often kept her home. Then there was Lucas, my younger brother, 3 years my junior, who just floated through life with an easy charm, like everything came effortlessly to him. I, on the other hand, was the family peacekeeper. When Lucas threw tantrums, I smoothed things over. When my parents argued about money, which was all the time, I'd distract Lucas. Teachers loved me. I was the perfect student, always helpful, always mature. My financial contributions started during senior year of high school. Dad's hours were cut, Mom's health was worse. Without a word, I picked up a part-time job at the local grocery store. Handing them that first paycheck, seeing the sheer relief on their faces, made my chest swell with pride. "You don't have to do this, honey," Mom said, but her fingers clutched the check like it was gold. "I want to help," I told her, and I truly meant it. "We're a family. We take care of each other." That became my mantra. Throughout college, while my friends chased loans and spending money, I worked to support my family. I chose a state school close to home, lived in the cheapest dorm, and sent money home constantly. My parents would brag about their responsible daughter, telling everyone how I never forgot where I came from. After graduation, moving back home felt completely natural. I'd landed a decent marketing coordinator job, and Lucas was starting his sophomore year. The plan seemed perfect. Save on rent, help my family through a temporary rough patch. The mortgage was $1,847 a month. They approached me about taking it over, almost embarrassed. Dad explained his reduced hours, Mom's health issues. "Just until we get back on our feet," Mom promised. "Maybe 6 months, a year at most." I agreed without a second thought. Soon, it wasn't just the mortgage. It was utility bills, groceries, household expenses. To keep up, I picked up a second job, working weekends at a clothing store. I was easily clocking 60 hours a week. But seeing their stress melt away, it felt worth every single exhausting moment. My daily life was a meticulously choreographed dance. 5:30 a.m. wake up, quick workout, coffee, primary job. Lunch breaks were for paying bills or family errands. After work, grocery runs, picking up Mom's prescriptions, driving her to appointments. Evenings were cooking, chores, and a desperate attempt at a social life that rarely materialized. The validation was intoxicating. Neighbors called me a wonderful daughter, family members praised my selflessness. My parents would gush to friends, "Madison has been such a blessing. I don't know what we'd do without her." Months bled into years. That temporary arrangement became the permanent reality. Lucas needed $400 for textbooks. I covered it. The family car needed $800 in repairs. I handled it. Medical copays, appliance replacements, they all became my responsibility. This was family, I told myself. This was love in action. While my friends were traveling, dating, pursuing graduate degrees, I was building a foundation for the people I loved most. My apartment fund became the family emergency fund. My vacation savings became Lucas's textbook money. My retirement contributions became household repairs. And the pride? It felt totally justified. My parents bragged, Lucas had financial freedom, and I, for the first time, felt indispensable. My contributions mattered. Looking back, I can see the shift, the slow, insidious change. But at the time, it all felt so right. I was the successful daughter, the family's financial backbone. My entire identity was wrapped up in my ability to provide, to sacrifice. I measured my worth by how much I could give, how many problems I could solve, how grateful my family seemed. What I didn't realize was that gratitude can morph into expectation, so gradually you don't notice it's gone until it's too late. The change in their attitude started with subtle comments, small jabs that left me feeling vaguely unsettled. One Sunday dinner, Mom mentioned a coworker's daughter who was engaged at 24. "She's got her whole life figured out," Mom said, glancing pointedly at me. "Some girls know how to balance career and personal life." It stung, but I brushed it off. A few weeks later, Dad made an offhand remark, "All work and no play, Madison. When's the last time you went on a date?" I'd been on 2 dates in a year, both cut short because I was exhausted. How could I explain I barely had time to sleep, let alone romance? "Just focused on my career," I'd reply, the same tired answer. "That's what worries us," Mom said, her voice chilling. "You're 25, living at home, no social life. It's not healthy." The irony choked me. I was living at home because I was paying their mortgage. I had no social life because I was working 2 jobs to cover their expenses. But somehow, these sacrifices were twisted into character flaws. The criticism only escalated. During family dinners, Lucas would share stories of his college friends, his internship prospects, his social life, and my parents would hang on his every word. When I tried to share my work achievements, it was polite but distant. "That's nice, honey," Dad would say, before immediately pivoting to Lucas. I felt like a background character in my own family story. My contributions were only acknowledged when bills needed paying. My dreams, my experiences, seemed to hold no interest. The comparison game became unbearable. Mom once spent 20 minutes praising Lucas's girlfriend, so well-rounded, really going places. "Now that's a girl who makes the most of her opportunities," Mom concluded. The unspoken message, unlike me, this girl was living correctly. She wasn't trapped. She was experiencing life. When I tentatively suggested reducing my retail hours to focus on a potential advancement at my primary job, the reaction was swift and brutal. "Well, nobody forced you to take on so much responsibility," Mom said, her voice cold. "You made these choices yourself." Technically true, but it completely ignored the context. I chose to help them out of love, out of loyalty. Hearing it framed as my problem, something I shouldn't complain about, felt like a deep betrayal. Dad started making increasingly judgmental comments. I bought a new jacket after months of saving, and he made a pointed remark about some people having money to throw around. I considered a small vacation, and he wondered aloud about people who could afford to be irresponsible. This was agonizing. I was incredibly careful with money. Generic groceries, sale clothes, hadn't been to a movie in a year. Yet, I was being painted as frivolous. Meanwhile, Lucas could spend money on video games, nights out, spring break trips, and it was never questioned. An expensive new laptop for school was an investment in his future. My $10 book? Unnecessary spending. They began treating me more like a paying tenant than a daughter. They'd make plans without me, even for family events I used to be included in. When they rearranged the living room, they didn't ask for my input, despite the fact that I spent my evenings there and, paid for the house. "It's our house," Mom declared when I asked about the new furniture. That possessive pronoun felt like a slap after years of paying their mortgage. The emotional distance widened. They stopped asking about my day, stopped praising my achievements. The warm appreciation I once felt was replaced by a grudging tolerance, as if my presence was an inconvenience. The most painful realization? They seemed to be actively encouraging me to leave. Comments about independence, suggestions I was too comfortable, at home, pointed questions about my future living arrangements. I started questioning everything. Had I misunderstood? Was I a burden? Was I imposing myself? The seeds of doubt had been planted, and they were about to grow into a forest of hurt. The tension in our house became so thick, you could cut it with a knife. But I kept telling myself it was just external stress. Dad's job, Mom's health. I clung to those explanations because the alternative was too painful. My family genuinely didn't want me around. The breaking point began when my parents announced their plans to redecorate. They'd been talking about updating the living room and kitchen for months, discussing paint colors and furniture with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in ages. "We've saved up enough to finally make this place feel like home again," Mom exclaimed, showing me magazine clippings. I was happy for them until I realized what saved up actually meant. They expected me to fund the $3,500 renovation while being completely excluded from any design decisions. "We've already picked everything out," Dad explained when I asked about the budget. "We just need you to cover the cost since you're so good with managing money." The casual assumption that I would pay for improvements to a house where I was increasingly unwelcome felt like a physical blow. When I hesitantly asked if I could have input on choices that would affect the common areas, Mom's response was sharp. "It's our house, Madison. We've lived here for 28 years. I think we know what we want." That possessive language, again, stung like hell, especially since I'd been paying their mortgage for almost 2 years. But rather than argue, I agreed, telling myself happy parents meant a peaceful household. Around the same time, my career reached a crucial turning point. My manager offered a promotion, additional training, longer hours initially, then a significant salary increase. It was everything I'd been working for, but it would mean cutting back my weekend retail job. When I brought it up at dinner, expecting some kind of celebration, the reaction was immediate and hostile. "So, you're planning to abandon your family responsibilities for your career?" Dad demanded, his voice thick with accusation. "It's not abandoning anything," I protested. "It's a chance to advance, which would ultimately benefit everyone." "Sounds pretty selfish to me," Mom snapped. "We depend on that income, Madison. You can't just decide to make less money because you want a fancier job title." Their response revealed everything. I wasn't their daughter pursuing her dreams. I was their income source, threatening their profits. My promotion wasn't an achievement, it was an inconvenience. Lucas came home for spring break then, and his presence only amplified the tension. While I was working 60-hour weeks and funding renovations, he was planning an expensive trip to Cancun with his fraternity brothers. Mom and Dad said they could help with the trip costs, he mentioned casually while I was cooking dinner. "It's important for networking and building relationships." I watched my parents hand him $800 for what was essentially a party vacation. They had criticized me for considering a professional advancement, but Lucas's party fund was fine. The double standard was so blatant, it was impossible to ignore. The situation festered until Emma, my best friend, came to visit for a weekend. I'd been so isolated, her visit felt like a lifeline. Emma immediately picked up on the toxic family dynamic. At dinner, she watched my parents shower Lucas with praise for his academics and social life, barely acknowledging my work. When I mentioned a successful marketing campaign, Dad changed the subject within 30 seconds to ask Lucas about internships. "Madison has been such a support to this family," Emma tried to interject. "It's amazing how she manages 2 jobs and still helps with everything." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents exchanged unreadable glances, and Lucas suddenly found his food fascinating. Later that evening, Emma pulled me aside for a private conversation that would prove to be a turning point. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer," she said gently. "Do you feel appreciated in this house?" The question hit me like a physical blow, forcing me to confront feelings I'd been suppressing for months. "Of course," I replied automatically. "They're my family." "That's not what I asked," she pressed. "Do you feel appreciated? Do they treat you like someone they're grateful to have around, or like someone they just expect things from?" Her words planted seeds of doubt I couldn't shake. That night, after Emma went to sleep, I lay awake, replaying months of interactions through this new, painful lens. When had they last thanked me? When had they last asked about my goals, my dreams, my happiness? When had they last treated me like a daughter rather than a resource? The most devastating realization came 2 days after Emma left. I was coming back from grocery shopping when I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen, completely unaware I'd returned. "I wish Madison would just move out already," Mom was saying. "She acts like she owns this place just because she pays some bills." "I know," Dad agreed. "She's becoming a burden with all her opinions about everything, and lately she's been so moody and difficult to be around." "Maybe we should start encouraging her more directly," Mom suggested. "She's 26. It's not normal for her to still be living here." I stood frozen in the hallway, grocery bags cutting into my hands, as my world shattered around me. The people I had sacrificed everything for saw me as a burden. The family I had supported, financially and emotionally for years, wished I would disappear. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to talk to them. About boundaries. About mutual respect. About what our family relationship actually meant. I had no idea that conversation would explode into something that would destroy everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. I spent 3 days planning what I would say. I wrote down bullet points, practiced different approaches, tried to anticipate their responses. I truly believed honest communication could fix whatever had gone wrong. I chose Sunday dinner, thinking the familiar setting would keep things calm. Lucas was home, so we'd all be together. I made my favorite pasta, set the table nicely, tried to create an atmosphere for open dialogue. I'd like to talk to you all about something that's been bothering me, I began after we'd finished eating. My voice was steady, my tone respectful. I've been feeling like there's some tension in our family lately, and I think we should address it. The reaction was immediate and ice cold. Dad put down his fork, crossed his arms. Mom's face hardened with pure annoyance. What kind of tension? Dad asked, already defensive. I feel like I've been walking on eggshells around here, I continued carefully. I love this family and I want to help, but lately it seems like nothing I do is appreciated. I'd like us to talk about how we can communicate better and make sure everyone feels valued. Valued? Mom actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. Madison, we've given you a roof over your head for 26 years. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, and you're sitting here talking about feeling undervalued. Her response caught me completely off guard. This wasn't the direction I'd expected. I'm not talking about the past, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm grateful for everything you've done. I'm talking about now, about how we interact as adults. I feel like my contributions aren't appreciated, and I want to understand why. Your contributions? Dad's voice was rising. What contributions? You mean paying some bills, Madison? That's called being an adult. That's called taking responsibility for yourself instead of freeloading off your parents forever. Freeloading. The word hit me like a physical blow. I had been working 2 jobs, supporting this family for over 2 years, and he was calling me a freeloader? I've been paying your mortgage for 2 years. I choked out, my voice beginning to shake. I pay for groceries, utilities, Lucas's textbooks, car repairs, medical copays. How is that freeloading? Nobody asked you to do that. Mom snapped. Those were your choices, Madison. You decided to take on all that responsibility, and now you're trying to use it to control us. Control you. I was genuinely confused. How am I trying to control anyone? You act like you own this place, Lucas chimed in, speaking for the first time. The betrayal from my younger brother, whose education I'd partially funded, cut deeper than anything my parents had said. You have opinions about everything. You act like we owe you something, and you make everyone feel guilty whenever they spend money. I don't understand, I said, tears blurring my vision. I thought I was helping. I thought we were a team. A team? Dad stood up, his face flushed with anger. Madison, you're 26 years old with no life, no boyfriend, no friends, living in your parents' house and acting like a martyr because you choose to pay bills instead of building your own life. Each word felt like a knife. They weren't just attacking my contributions, they were attacking my entire existence, my life choices, my character. You want to know the truth? Mom said, standing up as well, her voice dripping with venom. You're selfish, Madison. You hide behind this family responsibility nonsense because you're too scared to live your own life. You use money to make yourself feel important and necessary because you don't have anything else going for you. You're manipulative. Dad added. You've made yourself so involved in our finances that we feel guilty for making any decisions without you. That's not love, Madison. That's emotional blackmail. I tried to defend myself, to explain I had only ever wanted to help, that every contribution had been given freely out of love, but my words were drowned out by their furious onslaught. You want to know what we really think? Mom's voice was cruel now, sharper than I had ever heard it. We think you're pathetic. You're 26 years old, and your entire identity revolves around being needed by your family. You don't have hobbies, interests, or goals that don't involve us. It's unhealthy and, frankly, it's exhausting. You make everyone walk on eggshells, Lucas piled on. We can't enjoy anything without feeling like we have to justify it to you. We can't make plans without considering your schedule. We can't have conversations without you inserting yourself into every decision. I don't do that. I protested weakly, but even as I said it, a chilling doubt crept in. Were they right? Had my desire to help crossed a line into controlling behavior? You absolutely do, Dad said. And we're tired of it. We're tired of feeling guilty for living our own lives in our own house. This is my house too, I said, the words coming out more forcefully than I intended. I pay the mortgage. I pay the bills. I have a right to be involved in decisions that affect me. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents looked at each other, and I saw something pass between them that I couldn't interpret. Actually, Mom said slowly, that's exactly the problem. You think paying bills gives you ownership? You think contributing money makes you entitled to control our decisions? That's not how family works, Madison. Then how does family work? I asked, genuinely confused and deeply hurt. Because I thought it meant supporting each other and being grateful for help when times are tough. Family, Dad said coldly, works when everyone respects boundaries and lives their own lives instead of trying to control others through financial manipulation. The accusation of manipulation was the final straw. After years of sacrifice, after giving up my own opportunities and dreams to help them, they were accusing me of manipulation. Fine, I said, standing up from the table, my voice surprisingly calm. If that's how you feel, maybe I should just leave. I expected them to protest, to apologize, to realize they had gone too far. Instead, my parents exchanged another look and Mom spoke words that would haunt me forever. Actually, yes. Maybe you should. You're 26 years old, Madison. It's time you learned to live independently. Instead of hiding behind family obligations. The room spun. They weren't just failing to stop me. They were encouraging it. You want me to leave? I asked, barely able to form the words. We think it would be best for everyone, Dad said. You need to build your own life instead of living vicariously through ours. And we need space to be a family without feeling like we're being watched and judged all the time. Lucas nodded in agreement. That betrayal felt like the final nail in the coffin of everything I had believed about our family. You're ungrateful, Dad shouted when I didn't respond immediately. Get out and never come back. We don't need your guilt trips or your money anymore. The words echoed in the silence. My entire family had just told me to leave and never return. The people I had sacrificed everything for had just rejected me completely. I looked at each of their faces, searching for any sign of regret or hesitation. Instead, I saw relief. They wanted me gone. Okay, I said quietly. I'll leave. And for the first time in that conversation, I meant every single word. The calm acceptance in my voice seemed to surprise everyone, even myself. They must have expected me to break down, to beg, to promise to change. Instead, I simply nodded. I'll pack my things. I walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom with steady steps, though my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. The room looked exactly the same, my marketing textbooks on the desk, photos with Emma, the lavender comforter Mom had bought me. But everything felt different now, like I was seeing it through a stranger's eyes. I pulled 2 suitcases from my closet and began packing methodically, essential clothes, documents, my laptop, a few sentimental items. I left behind furniture, most of my books, kitchen appliances I'd purchased, decorations. Those things belonged to a life I was apparently no longer welcome to live. The most surreal part was the silence from downstairs. No one came to check on me, to apologize, or to suggest we work things out. I could hear the low murmur of conversation and occasional laughter, as if nothing significant had just happened, as if their daughter and sister hadn't just been banished. Lucas actually came upstairs as I was loading my car. Need help with anything? He asked casually, as if I were moving out under normal circumstances. I've got it, I replied, not trusting myself to say more. He helped carry my computer bag to the car, making small talk about the weather and his finals. The normalcy of his behavior was more painful than outright hostility. This was just a regular moving day to him, not a family destruction. I left my house key on the kitchen counter and walked out without saying goodbye. My parents were in the living room. I could see them through the doorway, but they didn't acknowledge my departure. The sound of the front door closing behind me felt final in a way that made my chest tight. Emma welcomed me into her apartment without question. That first night, I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. I kept expecting my phone to ring with an apology, an explanation, or at least an acknowledgement that something terrible had just happened. The phone never rang. The first few weeks were devastating. I cried at random moments, seeing pasta sauce that reminded me of family dinners, at work when colleagues asked about weekend plans, at night when the absence of familiar voices made Emma's apartment feel like a foreign country. But something unexpected began happening alongside the grief. For the first time in years, I had money left over after paying my bills. Without the mortgage, utilities, groceries for 4, and constant family emergencies, my paychecks actually covered my expenses with room to spare. I could buy organic groceries without calculating costs. I could replace worn-out clothes without guilt. I could buy coffee from the shop near my office instead of saving $3 a day. These small luxuries felt almost shameful at first, like I was betraying my old values. My work performance improved dramatically. No more leaving early for Mom's appointments, no more urgent calls during meetings. I could focus entirely on my projects, attend networking events, pursue professional development. My manager noticed immediately. You seem different lately, she said during my review. More confident, more engaged. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I started therapy. Dr. Chin introduced me to concepts I'd never heard: parentification, codependency, emotional manipulation. It sounds like you took on adult responsibilities very young, she explained. That can create unhealthy family dynamics where your value becomes tied to what you provide rather than who you are. Through therapy, I understood their treatment wasn't a sudden change. It was patterns years in the making. They had become accustomed to my support without reciprocating emotional care. I had enabled their dependence, sacrificing my own growth. 3 months passed without any contact. I built new routines, made friends, explored hobbies I'd abandoned. I took a painting class, joined a book club, even went on a few dates with a colleague who made me laugh and treated me like I was worth pursuing. My new apartment was small, but entirely mine. I chose the furniture, the colors, the meals. I watched movies I wanted to see, listened to music I liked, made decisions based on my desires. The independence was intoxicating. I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. I started saving money for my goals: a vacation to Europe, a graduate degree, a down payment on a house. But the most surprising change was how little I missed the constant drama and criticism. I hadn't realized how much emotional energy I'd been spending on managing other people's feelings. Without that burden, I felt lighter, more optimistic than I had in years. I was building a life that belonged entirely to me. And for the first time, I was genuinely happy. Which made what happened next all the more revealing about the true nature of my family's feelings toward me. I was grocery shopping on a Tuesday evening, 3 months and 2 weeks after leaving, when my phone buzzed with a text. The sight of my father's name made my stomach drop. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. The message was brief and to the point. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage?" I stared at those 6 words for a full minute, standing in the pasta aisle. Not, "How are you?" Not, "We miss you." Not, "Can we talk?" Just a demand to know why I hadn't sent money. The text revealed everything about their true motivations. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted their ATM machine back. I took a screenshot, sent it to Emma with a caption. Apparently, I was never actually unwelcome, just temporarily inconvenient. Then I crafted my response carefully. I thought I wasn't welcome anymore. My phone rang within 30 seconds. Madison. Dad's voice was different. Gone was the anger, the righteousness. Now there was panic. Desperation. "Dad," I said calmly, leaning against my shopping cart. "We need to talk," he said. "There's been some misunderstanding about what happened that night." "What kind of misunderstanding?" I asked, genuinely curious. "We didn't mean for you to actually leave permanently," he stammered. "We were all upset, saying things we didn't mean. You know how family arguments can get." "Actually, I don't," I replied. Because in healthy families, people don't tell their children to get out and never come back unless they mean it. "Madison, please," he continued, "we love you. We miss you. This whole thing has gotten way out of hand." The declaration of love would have meant something if it had come before the mortgage inquiry. But the timing made it clear their affection was directly tied to their financial needs. "How are things going financially?" I asked, already knowing the answer. The pause told me everything. "It's been challenging," he admitted. "We've fallen behind on some payments. The bank sent us a notice about foreclosure proceedings." "What about the money you saved by not having me around?" I pressed. "You know, all those groceries I wasn't eating, utilities I wasn't using, space I wasn't taking up." "It's not that simple," Dad said. "Your income was. We had adjusted our budget based on your contributions." Translation: they had spent 3 years living beyond their means because they knew I would always cover the shortfall. "Can I talk to her?" I heard Mom's voice in the background. "Madison, your mother wants to speak to you," Dad said. Mom's voice came through, dripping with a forced sweetness I remembered from childhood when she wanted something from me. "Honey, we've been so worried about you," she began. "You left so suddenly, and we didn't know how to reach you. We didn't want to intrude if you needed space." The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. They had my number, my work info, Emma's contact. If they had wanted to reach me for any reason other than money, they could have. "We made mistakes that night," Mom continued. "We said things in anger that we didn't mean. But you have to understand, we're family. Family works through problems together." "What problems are we working through?" I asked. "Well, this financial situation, for one thing," she said, dropping the pretense slightly. "We're facing foreclosure, Madison. We could lose the house. Is that really what you want?" The emotional manipulation. It was exactly what Dr. Chin had warned me to expect. They were making their financial crisis my responsibility, my fault. "How much do you owe?" I asked. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage, Dad said, back on the phone. Plus late fees and penalties. We need about $6,000 to get current. $6,000. 3 months of mortgage payments they had expected me to cover, despite telling me to leave and never come back. What happened to the money you've been earning and saving without me around? I asked. Another pause. Patricia's hours were cut, Dad said. And Lucas needed help with an unexpected expense for school. Of course. Lucas needed money. And of course, they had prioritized his needs over their mortgage, assuming I would eventually come back to fix everything. Madison, Mom said, her voice pleading. I know we hurt your feelings, but you can't punish the whole family because of one argument. This house has been in our family for 30 years. Lucas grew up here. This is our home. The house she had called our house when she wanted to exclude me from decisions was now suddenly a family legacy I was responsible for preserving. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm respecting your wishes. You told me to get out and never come back. You said you didn't need my guilt trips or my money. I believed you. We were angry. Dad protested. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. You have to know we didn't want you to actually leave forever. Then what did you want? I asked. The silence stretched long enough that I knew they were realizing the trap in the question. They had wanted me to be properly chastised, to accept their criticism without defending myself, to continue paying their bills while accepting less respect and consideration. They had wanted the benefits of my financial support without the inconvenience of treating me like a valued family member. We want you to come home, Mom finally said. We want our family back together. What would that look like? I asked. If I came back, what would be different? We'd treat you better, Dad said quickly. We'd be more appreciative. We'd make sure you felt valued. Empty promises. Designed to solve their immediate financial crisis. No acknowledgement of the specific ways they'd hurt me. No understanding of why their behavior was problematic. No concrete plan for change. And if I can't move back right away? I asked. If I need time to think about it? Well, we'd need help with the mortgage situation regardless, Mom said. Even if you're not ready to move back, surely you can help us avoid foreclosure. We're still family. There it was. The real ask. They wanted my money whether I came back or not. They wanted me to resume financial responsibility while they decided if they could tolerate my presence. I looked around the grocery store at other shoppers, living their normal lives. I thought about my peaceful apartment, my growing savings, my improving work performance, my newfound self-worth. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up the phone. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was going to say to my family. And I was finally ready to say it. I waited 2 days. Not because I needed more time to make my decision, but because I wanted to be absolutely clear about my boundaries. I had spent too many years reacting to their demands instead of responding from a place of strength. When I finally called, Dad answered on the first ring. Madison. Thank God, he said. We've been waiting to hear from you. I've made my decision, I said calmly. I won't be moving back home, and I won't be helping with the mortgage or any other financial obligations. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. What do you mean? Mom's voice came through the speaker, sharp with disbelief. I mean exactly what I said, I replied. I'm not coming back, and I'm not sending money. But we explained that we didn't mean what we said that night. Dad protested. We were upset. We want you to come home. No, you don't, I replied, my voice steady. You want my money. If you wanted me, you would have called 3 months ago to apologize. You would have reached out when you realized you missed me, not when you realized you missed my financial contributions. That's not fair, Mom said. We gave you space because we thought that's what you wanted. You gave me space because it was easier than admitting you were wrong, I corrected. And you only ended that space when you needed something from me. I could hear muffled conversation in the background. Then Dad spoke again. Madison, I understand you're hurt, but we're facing foreclosure. We could lose our home. Surely your anger isn't worth more than your family's security. The attempt to make me responsible for their crisis was exactly what I had expected, and I was ready for it. Your financial security is not my responsibility, I said. You told me I was manipulative for making myself necessary to your finances. You told me I was controlling for having opinions about money I contributed. You told me I was selfish for prioritizing my career advancement. So, I removed myself from your financial situation entirely. You're being vindictive, Mom accused. You're punishing us for one argument. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm protecting myself from being taken advantage of again. You spent 3 years accepting my money while criticizing my character. You made me feel guilty for every personal purchase while expecting me to fund your wants and needs without question. That's not a relationship I'm willing to continue. But we're family, Dad said, his voice taking on a pleading tone I had never heard before. Yes, we are, I agreed. And families should support each other's growth, celebrate each other's achievements, and treat each other with respect. When did you last do any of those things for me? The question hung in the air unanswered because we all knew the truth. They couldn't remember the last time they had shown genuine interest in my happiness or success that didn't relate to their own benefit. We'll do better, Mom promised. We'll change how we treat you. Just help us through this crisis and things will be different. You had 3 years to treat me better when I was contributing to your household, I said. You chose to take me for granted instead. I'm not giving you another opportunity to do the same thing. What about Lucas? Dad asked, playing what he clearly thought was his strongest card. He'll have to drop out of school if we lose the house. Do you want to ruin your brother's future? The emotional manipulation was so transparent that I felt insulted by his assumption that it would work on me. Lucas is 23 years old, I replied. He can take out student loans like millions of other college students. He can get a part-time job like I did. He can learn to support himself instead of depending on family money for his lifestyle. That's cruel, Mom cried. He shouldn't have to struggle because you're holding a grudge. It's not cruel to expect an adult to be financially responsible for himself, I said. It's not a grudge to refuse to enable a family that doesn't respect me. It's called having boundaries. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, my parents alternating between guilt trips, empty promises, and subtle threats about what would happen to our family if I didn't help. I listened to it all with a detachment that surprised me. Finally, I ended the call with words I had been preparing for days. I spent 3 years being your ATM while you criticized and dismissed me, I said. I sacrificed my social life, my career advancement, and my self-worth to keep you comfortable. You didn't appreciate it then, and you only miss it now because you need money. I'm not coming back to be taken for granted again. Madison, please. Richard tried one more time. You told me to get out and never come back, I continued. You said you didn't need my guilt trips or my money. I respected your wishes then, and I'm respecting them now. Don't contact me again unless you have something to say that doesn't involve asking for money. I hung up and immediately blocked their numbers. The relief I felt was immediate and overwhelming. For the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for anyone else's financial security, emotional well-being, or life choices. I was free to build a life based on my own values and priorities. 6 months later, I received a promotion at work with a significant salary increase. I moved into a beautiful one-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and a balcony overlooking a small park. I started dating someone who appreciated my ambition and independence. I took a vacation to Italy with Emma, something I never could have afforded while supporting my family. Most importantly, I learned to value myself the way I had always valued others. I discovered that my worth wasn't determined by how much I could sacrifice or how many problems I could solve for other people. I was valuable simply because I existed, because I was kind and hardworking and thoughtful, not because I was useful. I never heard from my family again, which told me everything I needed to know about what I had really meant to them. Through social media, I learned they had lost the house and moved into a smaller rental property. Lucas transferred to a community college and got a part-time job. My parents downsized their lifestyle significantly. I felt sadness about their struggles, but no guilt. They had made choices that led to their situation, and they would have to make choices to improve it. Those choices were not my responsibility. The most valuable lesson I learned was this: love should never require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. True family supports your growth and celebrates your success, rather than exploiting your loyalty and taking your sacrifices for granted. I thought being a good daughter meant sacrificing everything for family. But I learned that being a good daughter means respecting yourself enough to expect respect in return. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices, because that's the only way they learn to make better ones. I'm not ungrateful for what my family gave me growing up. I'm grateful for the strength I found to recognize when giving became enabling, when love became exploitation, and when loyalty became self-destruction. Walking away from my family was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the moment I finally learned to love myself. Today, I'm genuinely happy and free, surrounded by people who value me for who I am rather than what I can provide. I've learned that my worth isn't measured by how much I sacrifice for others, but by how well I honor my own value and maintain my boundaries. That's a lesson that changed everything for me, and I hope it might help someone else who's struggling with similar choices.